our aims are in a national program of undersea research are to determine the limits of man's ability to work deep in the sea. Not just to make it possible for him to work on the continental shelves, but to carry him as far as it's possible physiologically for him to go. If we want to do that, it's necessary to find out how far he can go, and this requires stressing him until some limitations appear. These limitations may be those produced by the very high gas densities of inert gases, by the toxicity of oxygen, which he must have to breathe, by the difficulties in his speech, in his vision, his hearing. All of these things are necessary to study to the point at which the individual no longer is a functioning person.
In the summer of 1971, as part of a cooperative investigation, the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery sponsored a series of hyperbaric experiments at the University of Pennsylvania. Utilizing the sophisticated chamber complex at the Institute for Environmental Medicine, investigators embarked on a project called Predictive Study 3, a study which would evaluate the effects of various breathing gases during controlled increases of pressure. Here, inside chambers which could be pressurized to a depth of 1,800 feet, these scientists hope to define the ultimate physiological limitations for man's deepest penetration into the sea.
There is not just one inert gas to serve as a vehicle for oxygen. There are several. The most important of these are nitrogen, helium, and now more recently neon. I have indicated on the board here for gases such as these, which are the important ones, that if you wish to really learn about them, you have to carry the stresses that are produced to almost the ultimate of incapacitation of the individual diver. We reach back into pharmacology and deal with what we call dose-effect studies, in which the dose of a drug or an agent is progressively increased while you measure the increasing effects of those agents. The diagram shows a progressive loss of function from no effect, no loss, to about 50% loss of the function to complete incapacitation as, for example, diving depth increases from 500 to 1,000, maybe 2,000, ultimately perhaps even greater diving depths. Now, the gas determines the limitation. If the gas is a very dense and narcotic gas like nitrogen, then you can have extremely rapid loss of function. Pulmonary work so great that you cannot move that gas well enough at depths perhaps above 500 feet.
Within the confines of the cylinder, the experimental subjects must eat, sleep, and live for a period of 28 days. Only twice in the past had scientists studied men breathing helium at the pressures which were planned for Predictive Study 3. And the effects of neon had never been observed at these great depths. For the researchers, it would be a very careful, controlled exploration into a little-known region.
As soon as he gets in, he'll connect up the esophageal balloon and begin an entitled breathing package for the computation of resistance and dynamic compliance. Then we move to the variable rate breathing for the estimation of resistance and inertance of the airways at various breathing rates.
Twice a day, 7 days a week, during the experimental run, the investigators meet to review the progress of the dive and discuss the scheduled plan of further experimentation.
Construct the isovolume pressure flow curves. Following that, we'll do a couple of static compliance curves, and then Tim will be finished. We'll switch subjects and repeat the package with Ron. The bottom time should be about 2 hours, including the calibration of the flow meter between the two subjects.
One of the gases that we're particularly interested in now as a new diving gas is using neon. The station here is for neurophysiology, and I'm using two techniques to look at the brain, to see how the brain is functioning under different pressures and different gases. Signals are recorded by scalp electrodes that we put on the subjects in different locations on the head. And they're stuck on with adhesive discs. The signals come through the hull, and they're amplified in this polygraph. We get the writing out on paper to monitor the quality of the signals and to get a general idea of how the brain is functioning.
The general area of performance, we want to find out what a man can do at the depths we're studying in this experiment, particularly what he can do with neon as a breathing gas. We know that, for example, at 400 feet, breathing nitrogen as the inert gas, the subject is quite narcotized. This particular experiment today, he's breathing nitrous oxide to mimic the effect of nitrogen at depth. The tests that we're using work both with his motor function, his psychomotor ability, such as putting small pegs in small holes, or working with a nut and bolt assembly task that simulates the kind of work a diver might do.
In addition to performance studies, physiological measurements of blood gases and respiratory exchange had to be very carefully documented. Navy physicians Dr. Lance Hendricks and Dr. Brandon Wright, among many others, are pursuing investigations that may well pave the way for man's successful penetration to 5,000 feet beneath the sea.
Another important aspect of this study is the analysis of the capability of our subjects to perform adequate work at very extreme depths and extreme gas densities with an eye toward the application to actual undersea work. In order to obtain this information, our program is to have the subjects ride a bicycle ergometer, which can be loaded at increasingly heavy workloads from very light to a very heavy exercise load where they pedal against an electromagnet set against the pedals. In time with this, we will analyze all of their inspired and expired gases for CO2 and oxygen exchange. This, in conjunction with the pulmonary function analysis, will allow us to say that the subject is capable of performing this particular work level because the oxygen exchange is adequate to supply the muscular needs.
By the end of Predictive Study 3 and the successful completion of the experiment, investigators were able to conclude that respiratory effort is not a limiting factor, and that indeed man can breathe diving mixtures and perform adequately at gas densities equivalent to 5,000 feet of water. These studies were the first to conclusively document the successful utilization of neon and helium without performance impairment at depths of 1,200 feet. As part of the large ongoing underwater biomedical research program of the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, this research was sponsored to explore the deepest limitations of man's physiological tolerance and ultimately to guide his safe performance beyond new frontiers in the depths of the sea.